Next podcast with Chris and Todd.
I was thinking about something the other day. This has nothing to do, obviously, with what we're going to talk about today in Next Steps, but it does.
Here we go.
I can make it work.
Okay.
Nobody prepares you for the next steps of parenthood when there's nothing on TV and you find yourself watching a kid's movie.
Nice. What was the kid's movie?
You know what? I think it was the big one right now that we always land on is Despicable Me, one of the 1, 2, or 3, or
Great
The Rise
show.
of Gru, or Minions, whatever, anything in that. I miss the days of always following on the penguins of Madagascar because they're hilarious. They're just, I always found them funny. Anyway, but nothing prepares you for parenting like going, hey, there's really not a good movie on. Not to mention that there's hundreds of thousands of movies that you can get on any given platform.
This is true.
But then you get lazy and you're like, well, I guess I'll settle for Despicable Me 3.
It's a good settle.
I said robot cookies. Anyway, so that being said, we're talking about next steps today and taking those next steps, whether it's in parenting, but specifically in regards to church and kind of the different things that we deal with in Next and seeing and wanting and desiring people to take next steps. And granted, some people are ready to take those and some people are not as anxious to go, yeah, let's dive in. But it's exciting when we get to be a part of seeing life change happen and we get to part of seeing people get excited about what a next step might look like in their faith and in their life. Because one, either they've been invited through an invitation or they have noticed and sensed God's presence in their life in a different way. Or, sometimes we see this too. Something dramatic in life has happened that it just can't stay the same. And so we have Suze with us.
Yeah.
Suze is on our team, and she leads kind of that next steps conversation with connecting and with different people, and she meets with people and different things of that nature. But glad to have you here today.
It's a pleasure.
Nice. I think when it comes to next steps, there's a lot of different components to it. But I look at it as like the ugly word for it is assimilation.
Yeah. That's a very churchy word. Well, a very business word.
Business
right?
word and churchy word. But I think I usually say the church word for it would be more discipleship stuff. Like, hey, people taking their steps along the way. So this is one of the things I think for our just listeners and people watching, we always say, hey, go to next steps. But if you were to describe a little bit of what does next steps entail, what would you tell everybody?
Sure, yeah. Next steps it's hard because it's in the past, it's been like a scripted thing. And I think we really want to have conversations with people, see where they're at, and see what is a logical next step for them. Yeah. Because it's not necessarily the same for everybody. And really our desire, the mission of the church, is to show people who Jesus is. Yeah. And we do that in all the facets, especially at Next Step. So we don't want it to come off as like, well, you're here, now your next step is exactly this and this and this and this. We have a lot of tools and a lot of options for people.
Well, and it's more than just a table in the lobby, right? Like
That's true.
I think that's confusing sometimes to people. Like, okay, well, you say next steps, but is that the table in the lobby, or is there something more to it than that? And pretty soon people find out that it's more to it than just a table, right?
Well, we were really creative in just Next Steps. So we have the Next Steps team, and we have the Next Steps table, and we have Next Steps experience, and we have Next Steps partnership.
We keep it very simple, okay?
Right? We just want you to take a next step.
There are next steps dating. We are not going to dive into that. Next step spouse matching.
Yeah.
No. We got to draw the line somewhere.
Yep. No. Yeah. And I think one of the things we've learned is we create a place for people to kind of go, hey, you go to next steps. But then a lot of the next steps also follows up within our follow-up and all those things. So even take, for instance, like we had Easter happen. And we had 700. It
just made it sound so weird. We had Easter happen.
I know, but I'm saying it. Sorry, I should have said we had Easter happen.
That was awesome. It was such a good time, man.
But I just to show what Next Steps looks like for our team. I mean, we had 783 people make a decision, which was, God, that's so incredible and awesome. And 600 and something of those are adults. And so we even use a texting service to kind of like, hey, here's these next steps. And Chris and I will probably work at making some phone calls for those who really kind of dive into it. But we got baptism coming up. We've got all those kind of things. But just going, and I think helping people see like there's a lot bigger picture to than just go, hey, go to the table.
Yeah.
There are so many other components happening behind the scene to kind of go, hey, how can we help somebody make a jump from they're coming to our church to plugging them in? And it's sometimes learning like this is too big of a step. And so what are some of the little steps along the way? So I was going to ask you, like, what's been some of the cool stories that you've seen come out of just leading some of these, the Next Steps team, doing a lot of the follow-up, all those kind of things?
You know, it's just great when sometimes you start a conversation with somebody that just walks by the table, and then that gives them the door to stop and actually ask a question sometimes. So that's really cool. And then that can help lead them. You know, we got people who are interested in serving just because we said, hey, you know, we like your hat. And they stopped by and we started a conversation. So really it's about starting conversations. And as we do that, there's just been so many times when it's been so cool to see the person that the guest is talking to on my team is exactly the person they need to talk to because of their connection that they can make and the individual, you know, God just connects people in such cool ways. And that happens so often. Just being able to pray with people, you know, is just a great thing. You know, somebody will come up and they'll have a situation, they'll have a story, they'll have a heartache that they would like some help with. And our team is able to say, hey, you know what, can I just pray with you? And, you know, there's nothing like being prayed for or praying with someone that just opens your spirit and just really is an encouragement more than, you know, even those conversations. So it's just been really cool to be able to see that happen.
I think, it just kind of breaks it down really easily when you don't know what that next step needs to be for that person. Maybe it just is a conversation, you know, or just being heard or seen, you know, just because of the size of our church, you know, it's people come and, you know, maybe they've been church shopping for a long time, or maybe they've been a believer, or maybe, you know, we've had a number of conversations where somebody walks into church and they haven't been to church ever before. You know,
or it's been years since
years, or, and you just don't know what those people. So I mean, it's just vital to be able to have those initial conversations that put you in a place to say, okay, well, hey, let's just start here. Let's start with a conversation. And you're right. I think the people that God puts in front, you know, and you have such a wide variety of people. I can't speak to East, but, you know, at West, a wide variety of people.
We have a wide variety.
A wide variety
Yes,
at East.
wide variety.
Not everybody's the same. It's not like cookie cutter. Okay, good.
Not at all.
That's good. I mean, I've been hearing things. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. But just the different people that you have, you know, from John to Chad to Amber, you know, and those different stages of life, you know, that people can look at and see, hey, they look like me, or I think I can connect with them. So that's such a good thing to have. So,
well, and it's also fascinating watching people as you guys like Next Steps team. Like there are those who are like, I am new and I want everybody to know about it. And so they'll come and be like, I am brand new. I would like to hear what you have to offer.
Right? Tell me all your things.
Yes. And then you're like a person who's been like coming for like what seems like 2 years, and they're like, I'm a brand new guest. And you're like, no, I don't. Okay. Yeah. But this is the first time And so everybody's different in that. And it's funny to watch how you, as a team, we go, okay, we got to put these things in place just to help. Cause it's, I was going to walk through, it's like, here's the linear thought we have. Of like, here's the things we would like you to walk through, but we kind of go, all right, as long as they kind of all happen at some point, this is good. We'd love for people to go the linear way. Yeah. Like, and I'll just walk it out. Like, if you were a guest at our church, we'd go, okay, go to Next Steps experience, then start to serve, start to get into a group, start to give, all that kind of stuff. And then we'd be like, and there might be some other things along the way, but then we'd be like, hey, we want you to be a partner with Fountain Springs. And that's the journey we'd go, like, this, we believe, would help you grow. And our goal is you get a stronger relationship with Jesus. Our goal is not to make you, hey, you become a Fountain Springer. That's the most important thing.
I'm glad we don't do that. I'm not knocking other churches. And sometimes it's like, hey, Pastor Davey, get on. Hey, Springers, you know. But in essence, you know, I think, not that we're trying to be holier than thou when we say that. Like, our goal isn't to make you Fountain Springers.
No.
Our goal is to make you followers of Jesus.
That's correct.
And you know, I get why churches do that. I'm not knocking that at all. But I'm glad that our main focus has continually been like, hey, this is what we desire for you. So what, because I think some of it's because of the nature of the church that we have. Like we have a lot of people come in and go in because of jobs, or this is just a stop off for the military stuff. And super grateful. I mean, for the military that we have that get to be a part of the church for the season they're here, and some come back and some like, hey, I finally got stationed back in Rapid. They're excited to be back in church.
It's true.
So those are cool things. So I think that's, really, and you and I have talked about that before, just propelling people to be ready to dive into wherever they go.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that all that system, it could sound like, well, it just sounds like we're using people. I was like, no. It's a relationship along the way. We want to, because even our Next Steps experience, all it is pretty much they get to hear David's story, they get to hear some of you and I's story, but also going like, hey, we want you to be able to take the steps that we feel like God is going to want you to take. Like he asked for our time, he asked for our treasure, and even our talents too. And so he's like, so we go, here's the opportunities. So that way it's more, we want to build a relationship with you and give you an opportunity to build relationships with others. Because one of our focuses is connection. We want you to know people and to be known by others.
That's what we all desire, right?
And so Next Steps creates those opportunities. And then there's the other parts of it to where it's like, hey, but we also want to equip you. And so that's why you got to know about these groups. You got to know about these serving opportunities. And so I love it. I mean, I was having a conversation with a lady yesterday who's going through just a difficult time. And I said, so here's one of the options I would encourage you to take. Because not as a distraction, but as just like I need to be around other people. It's like, try serving. And it's just being in this environment could help you be able to build some other relationships. So, because the situation she's going to be stuck being lonely. And so it's just like, I want you to be around some other people. And sometimes serving can be that. But it's great to have this Next Steps team and be like, okay, so if you have questions, there's these people in red shirts or red lanyards, like go to them. And
like that's the whole piece of connection that's so important, right? That we need to connect to one another. We need to connect to a body of believers. That's all the biblical mandate for how we grow our faith, right? And we do it through serving. We do it through giving, not because the church necessarily needs it. I mean, but we do. Yes, thank you very much, right? But also because it does something in our souls. When we serve, when we give, when we connect with other people, when we're in community and we have that opportunity to have conversations at a very real level with people, not just, hey, weather's great outside, don't we live in South Dakota? But those conversations make a difference in people's lives, and that's what we are going after.
I think part of our call is, especially being on staff, is like we're called to like, okay, we got to edify, like take care of the saints, like equip the saints. And by saints, it's like those who believe in Jesus. So as a church, we're going, hey, like you are part of this. Like it is not just staff doing all this. And so that's why we're so like, hey, we want you to join with us, be in this, because you need this as much as we do. Well,
and that's so true. Like, I mean, I had this conversation this morning with my small group. Like, I lead a small group on Thursday, and this morning I looked at the small group and said, hey, Dave and Donald are taking over. And that was, the look on their faces were like, wait a minute, you're not going with us here? And like, then Dave and Donald, like, yep, we're doing it. Let's go. And so just the excitement of them taking that next step of leading and the capability that they have to do those things is so cool. And, and it takes time, right? Like I have another guy that I think for 4 years now, I'm like, hey, I think you'd be really good as a small group leader. And he's like, I just don't think so. I appreciate that. I'm like, no, I think it's time, bro. But he serves other places as well. And he's got a great heart and really seeking the Lord. And that's so cool. But it takes those different phases and elements and moments where, you just don't know when you're ready for something. And when you are, giddy up, let's get after it. So that's a good thing.
And what we've found is like, this has been like that process we kind of shared. It's been a learning curve for us for some years. Like we've now found like if somebody goes to the Next Steps experience and kind of, I think here's story and here's what the church is trying to do, the next step that they take, like the percentage of people who are doing that, I think you were telling me, Suze, 50 to 60%?
We're closer to probably 70% of people that come. because they have an opportunity. What I love about our Next Steps experience, we sit through the story every time.
Yeah.
We almost know, I can't say it verbatim, but
I know.
right?
Us three have heard it so many times.
But I am so inspired every time I hear it. It just, it's kind of like I need that monthly reminder of this is why we do what we do, is we serve God in our community through our church.
Right.
And, I think that people also see that. I mean, I've talked to people who've, decided maybe Fountain Springs, like you said before, maybe Fountain Springs isn't the place for them. Everybody's different, right?
Yeah,
Everybody, like we want people to find the place where they're going to serve, but they still have nothing but good to say about our experience and their experience with us. So I think that's the deal. We want to grow people, and we celebrate that, right? If you're going closer to the Lord in a different place, that's great. Do we think Fountain Springs is the best place? Well, it's a really, really great place.
Right. Well, and we're not going to apologize for this because it's like we want you to grow. I don't think God ever goes, hey, I'm really good with you being stagnant.
Right.
And so we're always going to go, hey, here's these next steps. Here's why this stuff matters. And we want to put it in front of people because that's part of discipleship. Yeah. And we aren't the ones creating it in the sense. God's the one that will lead them through it. But I feel like our role is to give opportunities. And so that's why I love what Next Steps provides.
Yeah, I think, and if we can, I think about it in a couple of senses. Like we were kind of championed by somebody that I kind of came in contact with, and a guy out on the West Coast, and that's a cool part about just these conversations. Like my buddy Greg Curtis, and he's on sabbatical right now. I'm just excited for him to get some good rest. Like he works so hard, but he was kind of like a catalytic thing for us to say, hey, have you thought about these things? And we've been able to take it, and he's so gracious. He's like, make it yours, and when I shared, even when our numbers weren't up, like what you talked about, like when they were 45 or 50, he's like, man, Chris, that's really great, and so for us to be able to share when people talk to you or Todd or I, hey, what are you guys doing? How is this working for you? Listen, this is what works for us, and so that's a beautiful thing. It's not just in the local context, but as we get to share with other churches as well about how God is using an idea of a next step. Like, man, we hope people are taking that on and seeing that work in their church, because it really is vital to take a next step in your faith. I mean, there's nowhere in Scripture where God says, hey, believe in me, and then just let that sit for a while. Like, hey.
Well, and that could be some of the complaints, not the right word, but the biggest thing that people would say of like, you're just a big church, but no depth. Yeah. And I go, we run the risk of that. That could have some truth to it, but this is why we do a lot of these things of just going, hey, Next Steps matters to us. We want you to take a next step, but we can't force people into that. Yeah. And so we're trying to find things that work, and that's the part that Suze, what you've done with the team and taking like, hey, we have got a spot, something that is pulling people in, getting people plugged in. And we still have we would love to fill some more serving holes. We'd love to fill some more groups and all those kind of things. But we're also waiting, God, it's got to be your timing on this. It's your people who need to come in and fill these. We just can't force that to happen. It's out of relationships. It's out of those kind of things. For sure. Because at the end of the day, it's like, we'd love for all these things to be humming along, but I want it to lead to discipleship. I want somebody to be able to have a deeper relationship with the Lord and be like, man, that was meaningful, that group. And not all of it will be, I greeted for a year or two, but man, that was meaningful for me. Now I'm doing this or whatever the case may be.
Well, and I think that goes across the board too. Like, we get mostly the adult side of it, but that it's the same concept through all our next gen ministries and different things like that. Like, because I think about my daughter, Jordan, she's 11 years old and she's a junior helper downstairs. And so she's like, hey, I want to take a next step and start serving, because we have that conversation with our kids. Like, where are you serving? Where do you want to be a part of? And she's like, I'm frustrated. Why? Why are you frustrated? You're serving. Yeah, I want to do it every week. I'm like, that's awesome. Okay, well, they may not need you every week. You want to give other people opportunities to serve.
You can serve other places if you would like. Yeah.
And so they were gracious. They're like, hey, you can show up. If we need you, we need you. If not, that's fine. Cool. So, it's fun to watch that take place, not just, and we have junior helpers, and we have groups in the next gen ministry, and every Sunday, kids are spending time in a small group, and students on Wednesday night are spending time in a small group, and, just really making it their own and understanding the importance of group and doing life together and seeing other people take next steps. and that's just really cool throughout.
Well, I love
throughout
that
the
it's not always staff driven too,
Yeah.
right? Like when
Yeah.
we look around and you see in the lobby, you'll see people talking with one another, grabbing the people that they've met and connected with, or even when we have our Next Steps experience and we have a time for them to connect at the table and they just talk. You know, there have been times when we as staff just kind of stand at the back and go, okay, well, they're just all carrying on.
You hate interrupting it.
Right,
You do. It's like,
right.
I say that every time. I'm like, I hate doing this because you guys are having a great time right now.
So it's and so it's not always. I think sometimes when we get on staff, we think, oh, we're the ones that have to make it all happen, and we really don't. And we really understand the value of individuals meeting the people that they know, because they're going to know people we don't know, the people at their workplaces, and they'll have get them to take a next step. So it kind of is a whole domino effect. That once they're trained, they can train others, and because that's really the Great Commission, right?
Sure.
That we learn, we know, and then we go and share with others.
So if somebody comes and says, let's just get practical for a second, like somebody comes to church and maybe they stumbled on this podcast. I think most of the people come to Fountain Springs that maybe listen to this, or but if not, like somebody comes to church and we say, hey, stop by the Next Steps table. What's kind of your process as a team, to engage with them?
Again, I think it's back to first, having the conversations.
Yeah.
What do they like? What do they know? And so it's hard to kind of cookie cutter it.
Yeah.
But yet at the same time, there are some templates. Like if somebody, and even if you've been coming to Fountain Springs for a long time and haven't come to Next Steps experience, I would encourage you to come. Just because, like I said, we sit through it every week, and I am encouraged, and I am just excited about the vision and of our leadership. And if you haven't really heard that concisely, come to Next Steps experience. We invite anybody who's not ever come to do that. And then, then again, that opens up conversations, So if we want, serving is an option. We talk about giving. We don't do that so much at the Next Steps table, but we do from the front. That's an important option. We talk about being involved in a group because that's just so important. And some people are like, well, there's not a group for me, and I think we talked about that before. Well, then you get to start a group. I mean, I think all of us lead groups a little selfishly because we want to pick the day and we want to pick the topic, right? So it's like having conversations. Those are kind of the templated things that we can offer. But sometimes it's just, hey, I need somebody to talk to. And, we love coffee, and I love talking to people. So it's a joy that, sometimes people are like, well, it's such a big church. And I'm like, no, I can have coffee with. My coffee schedule is totally open. I would love it to get so full that I didn't have time almost if there were so many people that wanted to connect with us. But we can find time, just to have another conversation, because sometimes all of the options we may lay out may not be the thing they need. They may just, like you said before, Chris, need to be seen and heard. And, back to stories, having conversations with some people where you have an opportunity to do that. And then you see that they take some of those steps, whether it's I'm going to start reading my Bible every day, or I'm going to, start coming to church more consistently. And you start to see over the weeks how they come in and they were so sad when they first came and just nothing was good. And they come in and they can tell you the good things and how God's working, right? That's so cool.
And those are the moments where you go, and yes, what we're doing, this matters. And I would say what's also incredible to watch is just how many different kind of next steps we have, because everybody's going to be different. And like, I'm not ready to serve. I'm looking just for some people to connect with,
right?
Or I don't want a group. I've been that. That was a horrible experience.
Right?
Can you please just let me? But also, it's like there's others who love being generous, and so I mean, we've had Syndicate recently, and even now, Love Your Neighbors coming up. Like these are just tangible next steps within our church that your team gets to facilitate on some levels of just going, okay, we're here. Let us help you sign up, or here's how you do this, or here's how you do that, and it's just what I love that your team is doing. I think is one of the expressions I've heard, and David said it, and I keep using it. It's just one beggar showing another beggar where the food is.
Right.
And so that's ultimately what the Next Steps team does. It's just like, hey, we've seen this happen. Here's where the church is going. Like, you should be part of this.
Come join us.
Try it.
Come join
us. If you got
us.
questions, we'd love to talk with you about it. And so, and I've seen moments where the Next Steps team, new family shows up and they're kind of like, oh gosh, there's just a lot going on in their life. Then I got this Next Step volunteer praying for them by the end of the conversation. And they left going, thank you. Like that just meant the world to me. And to me, that's where volunteers, but also the Next Step team being like, hey, it's not just the pastor who has to do that. We're all kind of called to take in those moments. And so that's that to me is like, along with all the other follow-up we're doing and the next steps experience and trying to lead people to eventually like, hey, you're commissioned by God to go out and do the work that he has for you. That's partner. Like, we are now partnering together. This is us being the church. And so we just want to, hey, what do you need? How can we help you? And to see that play out, it's like that started all the way back when they first started coming to look what they're doing now and how God's leading them. And so that's just been, I mean, some of the stories we've got is like a Rhonda Piercy who leads Fork Reel. The time it took for her, all the next steps she took to eventually being like, I feel like I should start my own nonprofit that helps the homeless be able to have food, or anybody have food in our community. It's like that didn't start like, hey, overnight. That was a discipleship process of her stepping into the church, taking these next steps, and us as a church helping her eventually get to this, like, okay, we're partnering with you. Let's go.
Yep, absolutely. And it's so cool watching. I mean, I'll out him, John, one of your Next Steps guys, and I love him to death. But meeting with him for the first time, just a cold meet, like he had come to church, but it's like, hey, we need to meet. And then the meeting that led to a friendship, and he and I have hunted together, but watching him surrender his life to Jesus, taking that next step of saying at least yes, and then now being not that he's drug into serving at Next Steps table, but Kim is very persuasive, his wife, and I love them to death. But had you told me, hey, 2.5 years from now, John's going to be at the Next Steps table, I might have said, yeah, maybe. I don't know, but
I want to believe that.
I want to see it. Listen, we all have a long way to go, right? Yeah. Like, none of us are where we want to be, but I just am grateful for him because, man, God's doing a work in his life, and it's fun. And I just keep praying that he would continue to do that in John's life. And so, and I know you have other great people at the Next Steps table, but that's one that I know. And
I just think it's exciting to think through, like, what Next Steps does is it provides pieces of the story, and it's not just this one, hey, you got saved, good luck. There's other now components to it that's like, hey, what about baptism? What about like, hey, learn to read your Bible and devotions, and right now media is a great resource for that. And there's like, hey, there's these serving, and there's these giving. And so we just, sometimes it may feel like, man, you guys don't stop. It's like, well, God doesn't. So we're going to keep asking some of these things, so that way you can experience the full relationship of God.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love it. Well, is there anything, as we kind of just wrap up this time, is there anything that you think about that you're like, man,
I want to say this before.
Todd and Chris asked me to come here, and I'm going to definitely say this. No, I'm just.
Oh boy, no pressure in that at all.
None whatsoever. No.
No, I just think at the end of the day, and we've hit it several times through our conversation, but I hope people just continue to hear the heart of Fountain Springs. It truly is. It's not just a mantra that we want to show people who Jesus is. We truly want to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and we don't always do that perfectly, but that's our goal. And so as we get to know people and have those conversations through all the things, through the groups, through every ministry, and that's just why I love being on staff. I love being a part of this team, to be able to say, hey, we are all together in helping other people grow their faith, because at the end of the day, we're all going to be together, and it's going to be awesome.
Well, and that's, I think, what I've just observed. This is just a good fit for who you are and how you do things, is because you love discipling people. You even doing a group right now, just focusing on the way of Jesus. But then on the same breath, you love connecting with people, because you just I want you to, you just have a passion to see people kind of take those next steps. And so it just feels like the role is perfect.
God-given.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for putting me here.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. Well, hey, thanks for spending this time with us. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.